Hey there, welcome to the Career Intelligence Podcast. I'm your host, Betsy Jewell. Today's episode is one of my favorite conversations because it's grounded in something we don't get nearly enough of in the career space: real data. There's so much advice floating around about resumes, ATS systems, LinkedIn, AI, and job searching that it can be hard to know what's actually true. That's why I invited Sam Wright, head of career strategy at Huntr, to join me. Sam and his team analyze data from more than 140,000 job applications and tens of thousands of job seekers. During our conversation, we dig into what they're seeing in today's hiring market, what's changed, what hasn't, and which strategies are actually leading to interviews and offers. If you've been wondering whether ATS systems are really rejecting your resume, whether two-page resumes are okay, how AI should fit in your job search, or why networking matters more than ever, this episode is for you. Now let's get started. Hi, Sam. Thanks so much for being here today on the Career Intelligence Podcast.
Yeah, super happy to be with you, Betsy. Thanks for the invite.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I'm a bit of a data nerd, and you put out these amazing reports. We'll definitely dig into that. But before we get started, if you could just take a minute and kind of let my audience know who you are, that would be great.
So Sam Wright, head of career strategy here at Huntr.co. We're a small startup that produced one of the best and biggest job search trackers in the world. So people are tracking and managing their online job search with us. And what that means is we also have a lot of data on what works and what doesn't in terms of job search, from where you should be looking for jobs to resume interventions as well, because we have a resume builder that's built on top of our job search tracker tracking tool. Just trying to demystify and help folks out. There's a lot of snake oil sales and fear, uncertainty, and doubt in job search, and a lot of folks don't know where to turn. And so we try to just root our advice and support in data that hopefully helps people get jobs.
Again, I always appreciate the information and the data that you share on LinkedIn and in reports. And as a career coach, a human career coach, with the arrival of AI, we're seeing a lot of questions and kind of confusion about where do humans fit in, not by me, but by job seekers.
Yeah.
Do I really need a coach? What's the value there? Can AI just do it for me? So I'd like to talk a little bit about that too. But before we get started, I just want to reference, I think it was this week or last week, the job search trends report for quarter 1 of this year came out, right? And
Yeah.
some of the numbers blew my mind. So in quarter 1 of 2026, 140,000 applications. Can you talk more, put context around that? Like where, how?
Yeah. So basically, job seekers, thousands of job seekers are using Huntr to track and manage their online job search. And so that's a Kanban Trello style board where they're sharing here, I sent out applications here, I got interviews here. We've got all of that data that exists. And so, yeah, over 140,000 applications across over 25,000 job seeker searches, 40,000 tailored resumes. We also layered that on top of or almost a 600-person survey. So we're surveying people to get more kind of qualifiable information, then have some quantifiable information on top of that with our tools, and offering this data that comes from folks that are using those tools.
These numbers are based on the data from your tools, right? Not even considering or accounting for other tools. And those numbers are, if I'm a job seeker, those numbers are intimidating and a bit staggering. But on top of that, some of the other insights that you shared were the median time for a first offer was 108 days, right? Versus 83 days in the last quarter of 25. So we're seeing the length of time to get to offer is longer, that candidates are waiting twice as long after interviews. So all the numbers, if I'm being honest, are working against job seekers, right? Or is there some hope in there that I'm not seeing?
I think there is some hope, but I do feel like this is confirming the reality, which ever since we started tracking, which was this time last year or a little bit before it, the median time to first offer has been consistently climbing. But that's not really unfortunately, that's not really news for a lot of folks that are actually experiencing it. And what it is really kind of validation, I think, to say, like, hey, it is a hard time to find a job right now. You're not alone if you're a job seeker, that it's taking months. And this is it's affecting a lot of folks that have never had issues getting jobs in the past. Our data sort of skews towards tech folks. So software engineers, designers, they just tend to use the Huntr platform more because it's, a tracker and all of this. It's similar to tools they're used to in their work, so they use it for their job search. And so, yeah, that time is going up, just kind of confirms what we're seeing across the board. But there are some glimmers of hope. So I would say a few things is all of the numbers and everything that I've looked at just really points to a tailored job search approach is a better job search approach. So what do I mean by that? It means sending fewer applications. If you're sending, 10 to 20 applications, the interview rate is about 9%. If you're sending, 100 applications, you're getting less results from that. And it's about a 3% conversion rate on average. So sending fewer applications, sending better applications, focusing on some of the data-backed best practices and focusing on what you can control. And unfortunately, a lot of the job search, there's a lot of luck involved, but there are some data-backed best practices, especially around resumes, that we try to share because it does help and it does make a difference, and people are still getting jobs. I meet with people every week and we're still seeing offers get logged on a weekly basis. People are still hiring. It's just a little bit tougher and a little bit longer.
I'm seeing that as well. So my coaching clients are all early career, so young adults, college students, recent grads, and this has been probably the toughest season that I've seen it in the time that I've been coaching. But there are offers being made and jobs, people are being hired. So can we talk about the ATS, because that is like the magic, and not in a good way, acronym that everybody's like, but AI is going to weed me out, or AI is not going to accurately read my resume. So can we talk about what's the misunderstanding there? What do they actually do? Like the ATS platform, what does that do, and how does that help or not help a job applicant?
Okay, when you're going through your search, right, and you're hitting a wall, you're sending out applications, you're not getting any interviews, and you're not getting any feedback because a lot of recruiters and hiring managers, just they're moving, they have their own incentives, they have their own policies, so you're not hearing back. It is totally natural that then to go to Google or go to Reddit or ask the AIs, like, hey, why am I not hearing back? And you can think about this over the span of really since job search has evolved online over the past 20, 30 years, people asking those questions. And what we've found is there was this idea that got planted in the interwebs about applicant tracking systems automatically rejecting people based off their resumes. Now, people were starting to search more about that term and about what is going on with this. Right. And because of that, marketers and people in the business of kind of the job search side saw like, hey, let's create this applicant tracking score. Right. And this applicant tracking score is going to be a tool that you can use to see if you're going to get past the ATS. That is just a myth and it just doesn't exist. It's not a true thing, ATS scores. But it became like this marketing language that is so pervasive. It's even something that that just about everybody in the industry has started to use because people needed a scapegoat, right? People needed a reason, people needed like to understand. And so I really did a deep dive on this and I looked at, based on our data, I looked at the top 10 applicant tracking systems. I dug through all the tools that they're using. Some of them are using AI ranking tools. Some of them are getting sued in federal court for discrimination because of the use of those AI ranking tools. The jury is literally still out as to whether that's going to become more pervasive, but it's certainly become a little bit more, well, the whole industry has taken a little bit of a pause about, hey, how do we actually use these tools if we can't, abide by discrimination laws when using them? So yeah, all that to say is that there's just not a lot of evidence to support that there's an ATS that's screening you out. What folks should focus on is a targeted, tailored resume that proves impact, that showcases metrics and numbers that show how you are the best fit for the role. And if it reads really well for a human, then it's probably going to read for well if they are using AI tools too. And you want keyword matching or, to kind of mirror the language that's in the job description. That's just having a good fit for the job. But I see people, and it breaks my heart a little bit, who have drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak, on the ATS front, and then they have this resume that the font is impossible to read and the margins are really small, and they're trying to do all of these things, and somebody told them that it was ATS friendly, right, or ATS
Mm-hmm.
compliant, and those things just don't really exist.
So you speak a lot with recruiters and people in the hiring industry. What are they actually looking for?
It varies so much by recruiter. I try to meet with one recruiter a week and have met with dozens of recruiters at Amazon, Microsoft, Fortune 500 companies, and every one of them has a little bit of a different, strategy or mindset. One of them I met with scrolls down to the education section first. One person loves the summary section, the other person says they never read the summary section, right? So we have all of these different humans with all of their own biases and quirks and things that they do that we're operating. But there are a few trend lines. Like one is numbers speak louder than words, especially in today's market and with the use of these AI tools. So the context that you can provide by saying how much revenue you impacted, or how many users used your website or that you built, or the application that you coded, right? Like, so there's ways to kind of show size, scope, scale of the work and impact through numbers and metrics. That's one that comes out often. Making it easy for them to read and easy for them to scan. Again, that goes back to not optimizing for some nebulous machine, but just like, is it easy on the eyes? Is it clear? Can somebody who's reading 100 resumes a day quickly scan and get the most pertinent and relevant information? And so those are the biggest factors I think that stand out across the board.
I
Yeah.
find it funny that somebody scrolls down to the education, but you just, whatever is important to them, right? The one sort of myth that you busted in the report that you put out is about the 1 versus 2 page resumes, which I get that question just about every week from somebody, but I can't spill onto 2 pages. I'm like, yes, you
Yeah.
can if it's
Yeah.
relevant. So can you
Yeah.
talk about your findings on that?
Yeah, it just goes back to common sense, and the data confirms it. If you have a compelling resume and you're saying things that are interesting to the recruiter or the hiring manager that's reading it, especially focusing on that summary section, that experience, but there's no reason that they're not going to scroll to a second page or judge you for having a second page, right? Like, as long as the information is relevant and interesting and tailored to match the job descriptions I've mentioned, that's what really matters. And yeah, again, I see this all of the time, and even with entry level folks, because I'll say this, like 1 page or 2 page, it doesn't matter. 2 page actually performs on average, according to our data, better than 1 page resumes. But then somebody will inevitably pipe up and say, oh, but what about early career folks? Well, I ran the numbers on that too. And, early career folks with a 1 page resume that had tailored their resume. So these are folks that were using our tailored resume tool. The 1 page resumes converted at 5.45%, whereas 2 page resumes or 2 page plus performed at an 8.13%. So there was a pretty decent difference there, 2.5%. And so I would say that that's significant enough to say, if you are an entry level person, by no means don't put a bunch of filler words and stretch it out. But if you have a lot to say, if you've done a lot of things, if you've had internships and projects, and go on to that second page because you've got interesting, relevant things to share with your future potential employer.
That is definitely a soundbite that I'm going to use over and over again. So let's talk about LinkedIn and modern recruiting.
Mm,
And let me make it bigger than that. So I call them the big bad job boards. Indeed,
yeah.
ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, right? I had Jeremy Schiffling on the podcast a while back, and he's like, it's like winning the lottery. Like, your odds are so small of getting hired
Hmm.
through a job on those boards. Can you talk
Hmm.
about that and what recruiters are doing, with all the quiet hiring and the sourcing on LinkedIn, and why it's so important, again, for early career, but for everybody, why that's a new way of being found?
I want to be very honest with anyone listening here. that so much of our hiring system and the labor economy is just based on luck. And that's not fair. It's not right, because it's somewhere between 30 and 50% of all jobs are referral based, right? So that's just
Mm-hmm.
like knowing somebody, or more likely, like your family member knowing
Mm-hmm.
someone or your friends knowing someone. We don't get to choose our family, right? And that we're born into. So I say like that takes years, careers, if not generations, to have like a referral based sort of recruitment process. But then, yeah, on the job board side too, like some of the best advice that we can give is find jobs on niche job boards that don't have as many applicants and be one of the first to apply to those roles. LinkedIn consistently, we see about a 3% application interview conversion rate for jobs on LinkedIn. So that's 1 in 33 applications converting to an actual interview on average. When we look at a site like WellFound, which is a more niche job board for startups and scale ups in the tech area, that percent is about 5%. So it's a decent lift on that. It's 1 in 20 applications converting. I tell people, we try to see if we can get between 5 and 10% conversion rate. That's a good conversion rate in this job market. So yeah, I keep seeing that going to smaller, more niche job boards that are more relevant, focused in your field. There's Handshake for college students, tends to perform a little bit better. And even just using Google, which is actually just the de facto ultimate job board of job boards, because it sources, everybody wants to be indexed by Google and be searchable by Google for their jobs. So they put it in the format where Google picks it up. And when somebody's searching just sales job Seattle on Google, it's going to come up with a bunch of filters, and you can filter to yesterday, posted by date, and you'll find jobs that are not only posted on some of the bigger job boards, but also direct on the company websites. So that's one of the best resources that I've found for actually finding job opportunities.
I think I read a stat that said like 8%, like Google is the number one job search platform as far as conversion. But back to
Yeah.
LinkedIn. So there's been a big push lately, visibility on LinkedIn and optimizing your LinkedIn. But the question continues to pop, do you optimize for one role? Do you optimize more generally? What is your best practice or your experience with LinkedIn optimization, profile optimization?
It's one that I have less data on because LinkedIn really guards
Yeah,
their
true.
profile data. A few things that I think about is you can have a tailored resume, but you only have one LinkedIn, right? So
Mm-hmm.
best practice is to have your LinkedIn present on your resume. We saw a slight correlation to increased interview rates for folks that had their LinkedIn on their resume. So what's somebody going to do if they like your resume? They're going to click on your LinkedIn profile. They're going to go there. It's good to check if you're a real human, to see if you've got activity, it's kind of a social capital check, right? And so you should have a well filled out profile, and it really should be tailored and focused around one target job title at a time. That's what I believe, my opinion, because that's what works with resumes, right? So what I tell folks is try to focus on one target job title at a time for the next 20, 30, 50 applications. Now we can pivot in the future, but make sure your LinkedIn is custom tailored to that one specific job title, and your resume is focused on that one specific job title, and go all in on that, because humans are really good at making tweaks and optimizing. You will kind of get better and better at focusing in on that specific job title, but and then pivot if you need. But a lot of folks, especially on their LinkedIn, because they only have one, they want to say that I can do anything and everything. And we know in a slower job market, which was what we're experiencing, that hiring managers and recruiters are also stressed. They're also trying to fill roles quickly. They want to see the words that they want to see. And that's generally title matching, right? And saying, okay, the last title that you had is going to be the most likely that you're going to get an interview for. If you need a job today, that's going to be your strategy. If you're career pivoting, obviously you're going to recognize that you might have a lower application to interview conversion rate, but you're going to go for that. Yeah, that's kind of what I think about when I think about LinkedIn optimization.
So, can we talk about early career, college students, recent grads? That's the world I live in. You see all the headlines. I'm so tired, frankly, of the hype headlines. College
Mm.
students have a rough road ahead. What are you seeing in those earlier career roles, industries, all those things?
Yeah, we do see a slight uptick recently in I believe it's Fred that does the numbers on new entrants into the job market. But so yes, it's hard. In fact, it was actually about this time last year. It was the hardest time to get a job for a new entrant, which is as at a percentage of total unemployment, than any time since 1989. There was a big uptick in that in July of 2025, and that number has come down quite a bit. And so I think while that's helpful, there's also a compounding effect for entry level folks, people that graduated last June that are still struggling to get
Mm.
work. Oftentimes they're taking work where they're underemployed, right? So they're taking what they can while they try to get into their chosen profession. That's going to sort of pile on to the new grads that are coming up here this graduation season. So it is hard, but again, not impossible. And we still have data that supports that folks that are entry level are still getting interviews and still getting offers. So yeah, that's what we're seeing in the data set.
Are you seeing any specific trends or best practices for an early career resume versus somebody who's further along? Is there anything in particular that you think early career can do to make themselves stand out?
A lot of it remains the same in terms of tailoring the resume to match the job description. So if there's skills or keywords that they're asking for, make sure you have good coverage there without
Mm-hmm.
lying. That's always going to come back to bite you. So just make sure
Mm-hmm.
that you are putting your best foot forward and leading with the skills and the experiences that are relevant to the role, not limiting yourself to the 2 pages, which we discussed, having a compelling summary section, right? So really showcasing, I think what entry level folks have as an advantage is this like enthusiasm, curiosity, passion, showing interest, showing excitement, like those types of things, I think really speak to folks that, have maybe been in their careers for a little while, and, they get a little energized talking to somebody who's younger and passionate and interested in the work that they're doing and the company that they're at. So using that to their advantage, and not written in the data, but also doing your outreaches on LinkedIn and your networking. I had a young woman that asked me for a coffee chat a couple weeks ago, and she was just so great. She was interested in sales work. She said, "Hey Sam, I saw these opportunities, is really interested to learn more." And then we had this 15-minute chat, and it just made me want to help her, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
she was asking great questions, she was interested, and I even passed her along to a friend of mine who was in her specific domain, and was like, "Hey, maybe you should take a look at this person," or, "I just had this great chat." So those things, I think, really help entry level folks stand out.
Okay. I find that too in most of the clients that I meet with. They're so interesting. They have so many great stories to tell, and it's hard to make that come through in the resume. So I've seen some headlines that say the resume is dead. And I don't disagree with that, in that I always feel like, especially with early career, it's really hard for them to communicate, articulate, translate what they know, what they've learned, because they don't have it in work experience or they don't have a way to actually present it. So I've been talking a lot on the podcast and to anyone who will listen to me about proof of work and being able to
Mhm.
demonstrate that. Do you have any thoughts on that with regard to the resume?
I actually wrote a little essay on the subject recently, so that's interesting. Yeah, so I don't think the resume is dead. People have been kind of killing the resume for about 40 years. There's actually a book on
Mm-hmm.
Amazon called The Resume is Dead from 2012. LinkedIn was supposed to kill the resume. It didn't, right? Video interviews were supposed to kill the resume. It didn't. And now AI is kind of supposed to kill the resume. And I don't think it is, but I do agree with you about proof of work. And I do think that this is something we think about all the time as we're building AI tools for job seekers, right? These tools are only as good as the context that's provided. And the best resume writers that I've ever met with and chatted with, they start by sometimes hours long interviews where they just talk to you about your career, about everything that you've done, start compiling all of that, what we call context, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
AI business calls it context. And that's all of those nuggets of information, of detail, of work that you've done. And yeah, there's probably going to be, as we go along, more and more sophisticated ways of confirming that data is accurate. And I think the reason we have a lot of referrals is because there's not a lot of, sort of social trust with what's actually being said. And so there's all these different ways of validating what someone has done. But I always feel like, even in the age of these, maybe we're all in, I don't know, AR, VR glasses and headsets and everything, we're still gonna probably read and want like a highlight reel, and want to be able to see a quick scan of like all of the most interesting, compelling things that somebody has done. That's kind of what a resume is. But what informs what's on that resume, the way that you get that to be really great and really compelling, is through context and having all of these documentation of all of the things that you've ever done. And I think that's more and more important.
In thinking about all of the people who are creating resumes using AI, right? And maybe some of it's made up and some of it isn't. Can we talk about Huntr and the tools you have and how they ensure, I don't want to use the term AI slop, but I will, how they kind of keep us away from the slop that we're seeing in the market?
Yeah, it's tough out there for us trying to use AI in a way that's not slop and is intelligent, but I think it's necessary work right now because I do think AI is revolutionary and has changed how we work, but we are in the toddler stages and the toddler's just running around going crazy, so
Breaking stuff and
yeah, so we're still learning how to harness these tools and make sense of them. For us at Huntr, one of the things that separates us from basically every competitor, and we have tested over 40 different competitors as we are building our resume tailoring tool, is we don't let the AI make stuff up. We always have a catch where we scan through the output. There's when we're doing like an AI resume review or a resume tailor, there's 25 to 30 different processes that it goes through. So you can think of those as various prompts that are pulling different pieces of context from whether it's proprietary data from us and our job search or sources that we trust. So that's how we go through these evaluations very systematically. It's a lot different than when you're just asking ChatGPT to write you a resume. And then from that, we always look and say, if there's a percentage or a number or a metric that is in there that the user hasn't actually inputted, we'll put a variable and it'll be like an X or a Y. So it'll say like, hey, I increased revenue at Huntr by X%, leading to, Y head growth or whatever the stat may be. So that's one of the ways that we sort of combat that AI slop. And then there's an intangible that was still trying to be solved, which is the what we call kind of AI speak. And we know that like recruiters and hiring managers, they have a bias against AI speak, right? They don't like it. Most of us don't like it, right? I had this huge pet peeve with our resume builder when we were experimenting early days with the tools, where it would always start the summary section with the results driven, because like
Yep.
every resume example on the web is going to start with results
Results
driven.
driven.
And so we spent a lot of time working on the resume summary section and making sure that, it kind of generally starts with the title that the person's going for and includes metrics and numbers and scans their whole resume document, finds the most interesting metrics and numbers, aggregates them, and then puts them into a summary section. That's what a summary is supposed to be, right? An aggregation of the most interesting, compelling work that you've done as it relates to the job that you're applying to. And so there's little nuances like that, that they only get picked up when you have, again, that human in the loop. And that's why I think career coaches and resume writers are more important than ever, actually, especially career coaching, because I think a lot of resume writers are starting to move more into the coaching realm because there's a lot of that human to human impact and a lot of, if you don't know what a good resume is and you start asking ChatGPT for help without any sort of additional insight, you're not going to create a better resume necessarily. You may just create a lot of really bad resumes very quickly. And that's what we want to avoid. So yeah, context is key, but also having some knowledge and expertise and understanding of what works and what doesn't.
Who is Huntr for? Is it for anyone who wants help with a resume? Is it more geared toward people at different stages of the process or different stages of their career?
Yeah, usually I say it tends towards people that have job searches that go more than 20 applications, 30 applications. So it used to be that was more the case of early career folks, but more and more we're seeing senior folks as well. Huntr has users from all walks, early career, entry level to senior folks and across a wide variety of industries, although it generally skews more towards tech companies and more tech roles. But really, anybody could use it if they're trying to track and manage their search, follow data backed best practice, stay organized, and then also follow the best practice of tailoring resumes to match the job description.
Okay, great, great. Any final thoughts, advice, insights you want to share?
I think the last thing that I was just thinking of on my walk over is just a reminder that it's really hard and there is a lot of luck that's built into this. Because I do meet with folks that I basically say, like, I feel like 90% of the time I can offer something when I meet with somebody or when talking to a user that's data backed advice that can support them in their search. But then 10% of the time I get on with somebody and they're doing everything right. They're a type A overachiever that got straight A's and 3.9 GPA. And, oftentimes I'm like, man, this person's much more impressive than I am, right? In terms of if I'm meeting with a salesperson, sometimes I meet with these incredible salespeople that are struggling to find work and they're putting the metrics in and the numbers and they have a great summary and they're still not getting interviews. And that's really hard to stay motivated and stay consistent when that's happening. And that's again why I think career coaches and just support generally is really important, because rejection really hurts and it's not easy. Like when we're talking about this 108 days being the median search time, so there's a lot of folks that are searching for a lot longer than that. So to stay consistent 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months into a job search, applying to 10, 20 jobs per week, facing that rejection and just keeping going, it's a grind and it's really not easy. My hope is that you reach out to help in whatever way you can, in whatever capacity that you're able to. I try to meet with 4 to 5 job seekers for 15 minutes to start every one of my work days, because we are a startup, we are growing and building these tools. So I meet with folks for free just to learn about what's going on in their search, help them with their resume where I can, provide some support, and just understand what's going on in the job market. And so, yeah, that would be what I would want to leave listeners with is don't search alone and try to find help, because it is tough, but there are ways that you can keep going and improve your odds of getting that interview and then ultimately that offer.
Oh, that's such a strong message. Don't search alone because, yeah,
Yeah.
I see it with my clients. The struggle is real and it's really going on much longer than it used to. So if somebody wants to reach out to you for one of those 15-minute chats, can they do that?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Sam Wright at Huntr, HUNTR.co. Happy to be a resource. I share a lot of our data backed best practices and job search trend report information and insights there as well.
Yeah. I'll actually put a link into the first quarter report too, so people can take a look at that.
Well, we're on Instagram as well. So you could try Huntr at Instagram. I'm part-time farmer _, Sam on Instagram. So I do a little bit of job search stuff there, but also a lot of my life as a part-time farmer. So, one side of it is the helping people with their job search, building these tools, and also helping out on my family's farm and then also on other farms as well. Trying to ground myself in some ways because I do a lot of internet work. And so it's nice to get hands in the soil.
Well, that's super cool. I didn't know that before today, so I'm glad you brought
Yeah.
that up. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was really fun, Betsy. Thanks for the invite. And maybe we'll be able to do it again soon.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this conversation because it reinforces something I've believed for a long time. The career advice we give people should be grounded in evidence, not internet myths. There's so much noise in the job search space right now. Every day you'll see someone claiming the resume is dead, ATS systems are automatically rejecting everyone, or AI can completely replace human judgment. The problem here is that so much of that advice gets repeated without anyone asking whether it's actually true. That's why I appreciate the work Sam and his team are doing. They're looking at what thousands of real job seekers are experiencing and asking, what does the data actually tell us? That doesn't mean data has all the answers, but it gives us a much better starting point than opinions or fear. I also think we're entering a new phase of AI. The people who will benefit most aren't the ones asking ChatGPT to do all the work for them. They're the ones who know how to combine AI with their own experiences, accomplishments, and judgment. AI is an incredible tool, but without context, it often produces generic, forgettable content. That's what people have started calling AI slop. Whether it's a resume, a LinkedIn profile, or a cover letter, generic doesn't help you stand out. Your experiences, your stories, your impact, and your voice are what make you memorable. My biggest takeaway from today's conversation is that there aren't many shortcuts in today's job market. A thoughtful strategy, tailoring your materials, documenting your proof of work, building relationships, and making decisions based on good information will always outperform chasing the latest internet hack. If you enjoyed this conversation, I'd really appreciate it if you would like, follow, and subscribe to the Career Intelligence Podcast. It helps us continue bringing thoughtful conversations like this to more job seekers, career professionals, educators, and employers. And if someone in your life is navigating today's job market, please share this episode with them. I think it'll give them a healthier, more informed perspective on what it really takes to stand out. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, stay curious, continue exploring, and keep building your career intelligence.